Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we're speaking with Tim Hourigan, Executive Vice President for HR for Home Depot, which has over 460,000 employees, or associates as they're referred to at Home Depot. Prior to serving in his current role as CHRO, Tim was also the president of the company's Southern Division, where he was responsible for sales and operations for more than 690 stores and more than 100,000 associates.
Tim, thank you for coming down here again. We really appreciate it, and thank you for being our very first outdoor, socially distanced interview.
Well, thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me. After last time, I wasn't sure I'd get invited back, so I appreciate that.
You're always welcome back here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Tim, Home Depot has done remarkable things for the associates. At least that's been my understanding of it, in terms of how you've taken care of all of your associates throughout COVID. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things you've done?
Yeah, Anthony, I tell you, we go back to our founders. And, very simple message was always take care of your associates. They'll take care of the customers, and everything else takes care of itself. And we believe that. So when COVID came, we had a mantra, we had a guiding principle, our North Star, as we talked about. It was, first of all, provide the safest environment possible for our associates and customers, while we stay open to provide for the essential needs of our communities. And that's been our guiding light. So we did a couple things. First thing, when the pandemic hit, and if you remember mid-March, schools closed, people were sent home. Kids were on buses before the parents knew that the kids were on buses. There were elder care issues. There were businesses that shut down. We knew our associates were going to be affected in one way or the other, but we didn't know exactly how. So one of the first things we did is we said, every associate will get 2 weeks paid time off to use at their discretion.
2 additional weeks.
2 additional weeks. Added to that, for people at risk, and those over age 65 or those with compromised immune systems, they registered, and we gave them an additional 4 weeks off. So they had 6 weeks paid time off to say, hey, look, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but if you need to take care of whatever issue at home, if your partner lost a job and now you have child care issues, you may have schooling issues, you may have something that you're just concerned and afraid to come to work until you get more information, you'll be taken care of. The second thing we did in tandem was for those associates that did come in, we wanted to reward them for doing extraordinary things in very difficult times. So every associate that worked a full-time schedule received $100 a week over and above their pay. And if you worked a part-time schedule, you received $50 a week in addition to your pay. And we've continued that through today. So we've been running that since the end of March, and we're now continuing that. And we're looking at what's the right message to send to the associates working, and what's the right message for associates that may have other issues that they're trying to deal with.
So it sounds extraordinary. It also sounds expensive. How did you convince the board and other shareholders to invest that kind of money in your people?
I go back to a couple things. One, our guiding principle. We wanted to make sure that our associates felt safe. So we invested in PPE in the stores. We invested in sanitation heightened to the 10th degree. But when we sat down with our board and told them what we were doing and why we were doing it, we got 100% support. We're blessed that our board understands our stores. Unlike many companies, our board members spend at least 1 day a quarter in one facility or with a team understanding the depth of our business. So I think they saw the importance of the associate during this very transitional time, and they said, yeah, you guys are doing the right thing. And we've gotten 100% support for the board since then.
Some of this must be because you have a really extraordinary culture, a very strong culture. Can you talk a little bit about how you think that even came about and how you sustain it, and then what some of the challenges are during COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. Many pieces to this. I think the culture goes back to our core values. We have 8 core values, and that helps us drive our decision making. So when you say, what lens do you look at when you take a decision? We look at those 8 core values. And linked closely to that is our leadership model, which is the inverted pyramid. And many companies talk about that. Actually, I see that in our stores and in our organization displayed day in, day out. I'll give you a quick example. Everyone in our stores wears an apron, and it has their first name on it. When our chairman, when our senior executives go in the store, they too wear an apron with their first name on it. And you see, I've seen this chairman, Craig Manier, and I've seen previous chairman, Frank Blake, help customers. As they are working in a store, walking the store, they see a customer, they say, excuse me, to the people in the store they're talking with, and say, can I help you, please? It drives a connection that makes us all on the same level. And I think that culture of helping each other, we don't see, I'm no more important than the person that I'm supporting. And if you're in the store support center, you're supporting the levels that are touching the customer. We believe that. And I know, again, it sounds corny and it sounds, yeah, right, okay. But I've seen it happen day in, day out. And that's a connection that, frankly, is hard to replicate.
So a lot of companies talk about that. I mean, but Home Depot really seems to live it. What do you attribute to that to? Is that really just the leaders exhibiting that every day? Is there something more in the ethos? Something about the color orange?
Yeah, it could be the connection of orange. But I think it's more, we live it and each of us live it. And we're willing to call each other out if we don't live it. I've seen a lot of great executives come to Home Depot that exemplify the culture and are embraced and become part of the fabric of the organization. I've also seen executives come that don't embrace that. It is a true servant leadership model. And if you're not there to help the organization levels above you in the inverted pyramid, frankly, you won't be successful. And that's consistent, and I believe it's handed down, so to speak, father to son, mother to daughter, as the organization. They teach you this is how we do things here.
And so this tremendous culture, what happens when so many of the associates then have to work online? How do you keep that culture really strong?
Well, a couple things, and that is a challenge. So first and foremost, top of mind, yeah, we've got to continue to drive that. But one of the issues is, how do you bring people from the stores into the online environment? How do you seed that organization with people who have experienced that firsthand customer connection? Similarly with leadership and then the training that we do. How do you ensure that from a leadership training, how do we reinforce those messages, that customer centricity, which is so important to our success?
And has this become extra challenging for new people, I mean, particularly younger, those that haven't been part of the Home Depot system for a long time?
I think so. And, I've had several ad hoc conversations. I think that's probably the most concerning thing about this whole COVID pandemic is how do you imbue that culture in people that you can't physically connect with? You can have great learning, you can have great educational programs, but if you don't have that personal connection and that reinforcement, it becomes much more difficult.
And we talked a little bit last night about some of the benefits of working remotely, and you'd said that your associates are really reporting by and large that they're actually more productive, and the managers are even reporting that their teams are more productive. So can you talk a little bit about what you think of some of the advantages are?
Yeah, I think there's several advantages. First is it helps our associates balance work and life. And I say that because commuting time is total downtime. And living in Atlanta where we're based, 45 minutes into work, 45 minutes home is about an average commute. So technically you pick up an hour and a half a day to do different things. I also think with the pandemic, and there's been certain strains and stresses that have been introduced, like children aren't going to school, they're working remotely, they need some adult guidance. How would that happen if you were in an office and yet your children, and maybe they're not of an age yet to be left alone? So the parents can help pull away for a bit of time to take care of what their kids' needs are and then come back and do what their requirements are for their job. What our people tell us, both the leaders and our associates, and our spot surveys, is 95% will tell us that I'm equally or more effective and productive than I was in the office. And then I think lastly, financially, it's a great help. Not only do you not have commuting expenses, but you don't have wardrobe expenses. You don't have to worry about making investments in an automobile, the transportation costs, all those things mount up and I think add value to the associate.
So are there any challenges from this? Or anything that you have to really be cognizant of and thinking about continually to keep strong?
Yeah, so we mentioned culture, so I won't go down that path, but I think that's the biggest issue. Secondarily, what this has pointed out is a weakness in our ability to set individual goals. One thing I find is that when you say people are more productive, I go, that's great. How are you assessing that? Is there something tangible I can look at that would indicate that that's true? In some jobs, yes, absolutely. Whether it's IT development, it could be people working in our customer contact centers, and you know how many calls they're taking, et cetera. So I've got hard, tangible metrics. Many jobs don't have those. And so you have to go back to say, well, what's the goal? What's the purpose of this job? And then how are you tracking progress against that? And one thing that this COVID pandemic has really amplified for us is we need to do a much better job of setting individual goals.
And I know mentoring is very important to you personally and to Home Depot overall. Does that work the same? Are you able to do that as well or better in some cases, or are there some places that that's actually more of a challenge when it's remote?
Short answer is yes.
Okay, perfect. Next question.
Yeah, but I think where it works well is where you've had a relationship. And frankly, you can connect more readily with the technology today. So instead of setting an appointment and catching an elevator up to an office or meeting down in a cafeteria, and you've got the transition time to get to and from wherever you're meeting, it's immediate. So you end a 9 o'clock meeting virtually, and you start a 9 o'clock meeting virtually within seconds. So you can have those small connection points, 15, 20 minutes, much more easily today than you did in the office. But that's for an established relationship. I think it's much more difficult to begin a relationship. You know, as humans, you like to connect with people. You like to read the body language. There's the nonverbal communication that's so critical to the total message being sent. That's a lot harder to work on.
So do you have things that you do personally to try to overcome that, particularly with those where the relationship is new? So I'm guessing more the younger people, or at least newer to Home Depot people.
Well, I think for me, it's stopping to get to know the person. You know, it sounds so basic, but just that maybe in the first 2 sessions, don't even get to what's the objective of the mentoring relationship. Tell me about yourself. Tell me where you've been. What do you do for fun? Oh, that's interesting. Let's have more of a personal connection and put a purposeful effort behind that. I think is much more important in this virtual environment than it was in the physical environment.
Yeah, for me, that is extra difficult online,
Yeah.
I have to say. Do you have specific tools? I mean, you are naturally interested, I think, in people, so that probably just comes across, but do you have things you do to really make that happen?
Yeah, actually, I'll make a list of questions I make sure I ask. Because I tell you what this has done for me, the virtual environment, is boy, we get to the point right away. We've got a 30-minute Zoom call or WebEx event. But 6 people show up, you're right into the agenda. And that's what you have to guard against in this mentoring relationship. I think from a mentoring standpoint, both the mentor and the mentee, it's that trust that they develop over time that allows that to maximize the value add. And that trust is because I get to know you as a person, at least from my perspective, that's so critical. That goes back to you have to slow down to make sure you know the person and that they can reveal some of the things inside that maybe not be so comfortable to reveal.
So it sounds to me like these are really hard skills. For me personally, they're almost impossible, it seems like. But this also seems like a place where HR can really play an important role in helping leaders develop in ways that leaders maybe weren't aware that they needed that kind of help in the past. And I've heard you equate the current COVID period to something like Y2K for the tech people and 2008 period for the finance people. So can you say a little bit about what HR should be doing now that the attention is really on HR and where HR might really be making a difference?
Yeah, and I really do believe that, Y2K for IT just elevated the contributions and heightened the awareness of what those teams do. Similarly for the finance team in the financial crisis in 2007, 8, 9. I think right now, the pandemic, the civil unrest generating a significant amount of issue for people struggling internally and try to deal and cope with both of these huge, huge issues. I think from an HR standpoint, it plays right into the wheelhouse of how can we help our people be more effective. I look at whether it's coaching our leaders to be more empathetic, and I think that's a huge issue. How do leaders understand how to be empathetic with their associates? Everybody comes from a different perspective. It could be I have an elder parent that I'm worried about from the pandemic. It could be that I've seen social injustice and it's gotten to a situation now that I don't know how to react to it. As a leader, you may not have the answer. You may not be able to sympathize, but you can definitely empathize and listen. ask questions, try to learn and grow. Those are skills that don't come naturally to a lot of leaders. And from an HR standpoint, what I've asked my team, and we continue to push, is how do we provide the right tools to help people develop those skills? Realizing we're all work in process, how do we help build the path to becoming great at doing those types of things?
And at this point in time, you think people are more receptive to hearing HR emphasize those kind of skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the soft skills that historically had been viewed maybe with a little cynicism or at least skepticism, I think people are saying, hey, this is a real value add. And as we listen to our people, and I go all the way back to my first statement about our founders, if you take care of the people, well, that means a lot of different things to different people. And how do you understand what that means? And how do you personalize that experience? I believe our line leaders are extremely receptive now to any coaching on that. And it's a great time for the HR team to step into the chasm and say, hey, how can we bridge the gap?
So we talked about this, kind of some of the social challenges that are permeating throughout society right now. Home Depot seems to have a very inclusive environment. What are some of the things that Home Depot has done to really create that? And am I perceiving that correctly?
I believe so. I think one issue that we have internally that is a positive for us is people feel that they have a fair chance. We do our surveys as you would expect, and one of our highest rating attributes is I feel that people get the job because they've earned the opportunity. That's refreshing. I believe I mentioned the other night when we were talking that the person who leads our store organization, who runs 2,000 U.S. stores, 400,000 associates, over $100 billion in sales, is a Jamaican immigrant. And she joined our company as a part-time cashier 35 years ago. And when people see Anne Marie Campbell, they go, wow, I do have a shot. The gentleman who runs our Southern Division, which is about a third of Anne's responsibility, is Hector Padilla. Hector emigrated from the Dominican 26 years ago. And I think people see that and they go, hey, yeah, we're not perfect. We've got things that we need to do to be better. But I feel good about being part of the Orange family. And I really do believe that cements a bond that gives us the opportunity to be successful.
So all of this really goes back to, just like you were talking about with the bottom-up leadership, of really walking that walk and living it on an everyday basis for decades.
It's not something that we just created. We've been blessed. We've said many times the greatest gift we've ever had from our founders was our culture. And our job is to nurture that and ensure that it continues to flourish. We take that responsibility very seriously. I tell you, talking with Craig in these discussions, is we will not do anything that denigrates the culture. So then going back to our response to COVID, how do we take care of our associates in this very uncertain and very trying time? Let's make sure we keep that in the forefront, and we'll make the investments that are appropriate for that, and we'll be reassured that our board will support us as well as our investors.
And now switching topics a little bit here. Due to COVID, many boards have started really working remotely, having their board meetings remotely. I don't know if Home Depot has been doing that also. And you are also on a board now, right? So can you talk a little bit about what that does to the dynamics of the board? Are the remote meetings just as effective? Is that something that will be here to stay for a long time or forever maybe? Or are there challenges with these kind of board meetings?
Yeah, and again, I think the short answer is yes. Okay, yeah. But I think from the effectiveness, absolutely. We're able to conduct board meetings, and we've actually gone to a more regular schedule, but shorter duration, which enables it to be more effective. We can have a few topics in an hour and a half or so in a virtual board meeting that we're able to accomplish. The interaction's good, both from the board members and from management, being able to ask questions and respond appropriately. So I'd say effectiveness, yes. Efficiency, yes. There's something missing. And so I don't believe that this replaces board meetings going forward. I don't believe it replaces that connectivity. Yes, I'm able to convey the message, but I'm not able to build on the relationship. Now, the good news is, obviously, we've had a relationship that's extended a number of years. So we do have positive interactions. But I worry about as this continues and new people come onto the board, new executives join the team, they won't have that same ability to connect remotely as they've been able to connect in the past in person.
And are those connections that you're talking about, is that within board members, so board member and board member, as well as between board and management, or does it affect one more than the other?
I think it's the entire situation. It's the board member to board member, it's management to board member. It's the ability to connect, and credibility is so important from the management team as they present to the board initiatives. They need to understand as a board that, hey, these guys are doing great work, they're credible, I have 100% confidence in what they're presenting. And I do believe that personal connection reinforces that. Right now we haven't had any changes on our executive team or on our board since COVID. So we all have that connection that predates this. If I look forward, we're going to have to figure out how to make those connections in a different way.
And then the last question is, again, also about boards, and specifically the board you're on. And what does having a steeped HR background bring something unique to a board? Do you think that really provides a different perspective than many boards get?
Oh, absolutely. I think from many angles. First, you have to be a business person, so you understand the business and you understand the drivers of the business. But the unique vector that you can bring from an HR perspective, both on talent, both on associate connections, both on the importance of that, as well as the ways to effectively drive it, I think brings a uniqueness and a valued perspective to the boards.
Tim, once again, and as always, thank you very much for all of the insights and for joining us here. We really appreciate it.
Well, Anthony, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Tim Hourigan of Home Depot, a senior business executive who personifies humble leadership, shared his views regarding how businesses can both be strong and good. As you heard, Tim laid out strong arguments for why culture is critical for sustainable business success, for how and why bottom-up leadership can be a competitive advantage, and for why HR is essential for driving both. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.